So Angie, are we up and running? Thought I saw the I thought I saw the little doodad here.
What's that?
Are we up and running?
Are we recording yet or no? Not yet.
Okay. Now we're good? Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's Planning Commission meeting, March 6th, 2024. We'd like to start this meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance as led by Angie. Okay, looks like we have a full quorum tonight. Are there any conflicts of interest on the commission? None noted. Okay, thank you. Let's move to item 3.4, approval of minutes from February 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for February 7th, 2024.
Motion by Heather,
Second.
second by Forrest. All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's move on to administrative items. Item 4.1. This will be presented by Jonathan Bowers. Or not. It's
Lauren.
Lauren. Lauren will present this one. Great.
Yeah. All right, so we'll be talking about the installation and construction of 2 water tanks in zones 2 and 3. So this is located down in the Porter Rockwell area of our city. These 2 red dots represent where the water tanks will be going. So these 2 locations are currently on private land. However, the city will be maintaining the water tanks as soon as they are put in. However, we will have the land once this subdivision is platted and comes through our process entirely. It's not going to the next one. There we go, thank you. So there are 2 water tanks that each hold 2 million gallons of water, and they will be constructed to sit below the surface. And the service zones are zone 2 and 3, so that is not our planning department zoning, it's the water zoning. So these are just the proposed elevations. This is zone 2. As you can see, that periscope-like portion in the middle is the only piece that will actually be above ground. And then we have a similar example here for zone 3 water tank. And then staff recommends approval, just making sure that when the right-of-way comes in near zone 2, that the connection is just meets all of the engineering standards. That's all. If you have any questions, Jonathan is here.
Thank you, Lauren.
Jonathan will be happy to answer them. How far apart are the 2 tanks?
Well, give me a few seconds and I can figure that out for you. I have nothing else to present other than answering questions. So other than your question, does anyone else have any other questions?
I was going to say we're down to 1 civil engineer tonight.
Listen, I have been studying this thing, trying to think of every question everyone was going to ask.
Just a curiosity question. Where does the water come from that will be in these tanks?
What was the question again?
Where will the water come from that will be in these tanks?
Oh, where will the water
So-
come from?
Yeah.
Good question. So So we have a turnout from Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District where we pull water, and that's in Bluffdale off 150th. And we pull that water up to what's called the Zone 1 tank. So everything I'm explaining right now is existing, right? And so we pump that to a Zone 1 tank that is just a little bit further below these Zone 2 and Zone 3s. So and then we will have another pump station that does not exist yet. It's called the dual zone pump station. We'll pump it up to each one of these tanks from that tank. So the short answer is it comes from Jordan Valley, but it takes a little bit of a detour before it gets there. Can I say it's probably about a half a mile away? Well, it'll take me a sec, but I can get that for you.
And that water source is very secure. Will never
From-
be in jeopardy from the tank one or whatever.
Yeah. Well, right now it's fenced in. It's got SCADA. It's got security on it.
I mean the water itself. It's always going to be flowing.
Oh, from Jordan Valley.
Yes.
For now, that's what Jordan Valley's telling us. We are not exceeding what we have. Well, that's not true. We have actually exceeded in a few cases our contract amount, but
Have wells ever been evaluated for this area?
we do have wells in a handful of areas, but not in this area. They have not been evaluated, no.
But I guess they could even after the fact, right?
Yeah, and I would presume that if we did so, we would pump these to the Zone 1 source and then pump, so these tanks would be irrelevant to that.
And is there a map that shows us the extent that these tanks can?
Yeah, that should be in your packet. Lauren, I think you said you quantified about 15 acres total in summation. There's significant grading going on this site currently.
2175 feet apart.
Thanks, Craig. 2175 feet apart. That's not too far away from a half a mile. Man, I nailed it. I'm going to tell you that right now. That's pretty good. Did I answer your questions, Daryl? Sorry.
You did. Bigger concern was just how big of an area will these tanks serve? So,
Yep. So they will serve significant areas, both existing and mostly. It's the lion's share is for proposed and new areas, but they will end up helping a redundancy for existing homes and services and demands.
As far as the cost goes, is that being absorbed by the developer or is it shared with the city?
That's a good question. There is an agreement that is currently being drafted to come up with a proportionate share between 3 different parties currently. That's Herriman City. DAI is one developer who will obviously serve directly off of this, as well as Wasatch.
Okay.
We've done analysis to determine what percentages those are, what the actual cost will be. We do not know yet. We haven't bid them. We want that agreement to be struck prior to construction.
How much above what's going to, I guess, be built is their capacity? Like, as far as, do you have a number as far as units, like households by chance?
How many more households it will serve?
Over, like, Panorama, South Hills?
I do not have those percentages offhand right now. We could certainly provide those later.
I'm just curious, like, if you foresee additional tanks above these ones higher than where these are?
Oh, good question. So yes, I can answer that. There are anticipated future tanks above. Whether they will be a system tank or a public or a private tank, that's yet to be determined.
Okay.
But their current, or at least Herriman City's understanding of future development will be that they will require some additional tanks and zones higher.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for Jonathan? Thank you. You can be seated.
Thank you.
Would the owner like to come forward and make any additional comments?
Well, it's kind of a tricky question. So we will be the owner of the tank. The
Okay.
property owner is not Herriman City until it is platted.
Okay.
So which owner, Jackson, do you want to speak to?
If you're willing to take ownership of this, then we'll say
Herriman City will be taking ownership, so I'm probably the most appropriate person to ask.
Okay, perfect.
And I don't have anything else to present, no, nothing else, so I'm happy to. Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, so we're the owner of South Hills. We will dedicate the land that those tanks will sit on to Herriman City.
Okay. Thank you.
So there's been coordination with the developers and the city, so these tanks are sited in such a way that it's conducive to their development, right?
Very much so. We originally did not design them on their property, and they asked and pleaded, and we moved them to their liking, location, and per their request. We've analyzed the changes, and I'll be honest, this is about a 4-year effort coming to this point, so a lot's happened.
All right. And any additional questions? All right, thank you, Jonathan.
You're welcome.
Any discussion amongst the commission?
I think they're needed. I think
Yeah.
these two and 10 more are needed, but
I feel like I asked the questions that I needed to.
Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve item 4.1, consideration of conditional use permit for construction of 2 water tanks with staff's recommendations.
I'll second it.
Second by Daryl. Let's take a vote. Andrea?
Yes.
Daryl?
Yes.
Tara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
Brody?
Yes.
With that, motion 4.1 passes with recommendation for approval. All right, let's jump to, let's go to item 4.2. This will be presented by Clint.
Okay, so this is a request for another pad down on the Academy Village shopping area. This is for pad G in pod 35. Very similar to what we've seen there in the past. This is just the next building that's taking place there. And this is the location here on the corner. As you drive by on that corner on Sentinel Ridge Boulevard or Rio Vista Drive, you'll see that site is elevated. It's got a large retaining wall on the corner there. So this site will sit up above that. And this is the preliminary plan that was initially approved. And at that time, this lot was called out as Lot 35E. That's since been changed. That was changed. They were possibly looking at a gas station tenant going in on that corner. And that, of course, is now changed to a different use. So this is the pad, again, 35E compared to what they have now. So we would just ask in their overall plan to just amend that and make sure that this is the configuration that will actually take place on the site. So there's a drive-through that will go on the rear of that property. There is one drive-through window on that side facing Rio Vista Drive. The landscaping on top of that with the bushes and trees will help kind of screen those car lights from hitting the streets where you've got an elevated drive going through there. But the landscaping complies with city ordinance. We have no concerns there. And then the elevations are very similar to what you find out there already with the uniform facades, pretty much. So I just kind of move through these building facades, and if there's any questions that I can entertain, I'd be glad to answer what I can. The applicant is also here. You might want to say something as well.
Any questions for Clint?
Yeah, so just to clarify, pad G used to be pad F.
I thought it was E. Yeah, lot 35E.
35E.
Yeah.
But looking at this one, let's see.
Oh, there's 2 35Es. There's 35E right there.
Oh,
No, I
so
think it
this
was
is
in the
this
packet
is the
itself.
revised. This is the revised one. This is the original.
Yeah, this
here.
is the one that I was looking at in the packet was, so it's lot 35F that's now becoming 35G.
This would be lot 35E, right on the corner.
Oh, this would be 35E, not G.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one in the work session where I was referring, it looked like they were,
Yeah, it looked like they had flip-flopped it between G and F,
Right.
and and
So the
E.
preliminary plans that they have here don't match what they're doing, so they'll just update that as part of the process.
Okay.
But yeah, it is on that corner piece there. So like I said, there was a possible accommodation for a gas station that has since come and gone. I think that was actually the name of it. But, and now this is the revised site plan for that corner location. There was some concern or some questioning about a recommendation, not necessarily a requirement for providing some more pedestrian access to this site. Where that might take place is, on the sidewalk that kind of goes to just in front of the building, maybe, if there's a stairway that could be provided through the retaining wall down to the public sidewalk or something like that. But again, it's just a recommendation, no firm requirement there. So it's something that, in speaking with the applicant, they think that's maybe a good idea. They'll consider it, but
That would be on the
happens to be
bottom of
where
this
they can't
page.
do it, then they can't do it. I'm sorry?
That would be on the bottom of this page where they would have the stair going up.
It would kind of go to the north, so the sidewalk that goes up just right to the left of pad G. That would tie across the drive-through lane and then potentially putting, some kind of stairway where the retaining wall is, where it could go down and then access into the public sidewalk.
Are the grades the issue? I'm not sure the intent of the park strip, not part of this project.
So the park strip is already installed. That's already been planted and installed there. So they've got street trees and plantings and stuff already in place.
Let's see, I do remember, I think approving a development sign for the overall project. I don't see it on the plan here, is it?
I don't know if that will be on this site or not.
I think it was right on the corner, but.
That's, applicant can talk to it.
They have a master plan, sign plan approved for.
There is one? Okay. Or there, okay. I remember us approving it, but, okay.
I see the dumpster pads. What's the crosshatched area on the top left of the building? Looks like a little storage
The patio area.
patio. Okay. So with the drive-through, is this like a fast food or a coffee shop or something like that?
That's for the occupant or whatever that is, right? It is. So this is the applicant, Alex. I'll let him speak to the project.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
Alex?
good to
If
see
you
you
could
guys
state
again.
your full name for the record,
Yeah,
please.
Alex Dahlstrom with the Wasatch Group.
Great, thank you.
So if you remember, I was in here getting pads H, I, E, and F approved for site plan elevations and landscaping. And we excluded pad G from that approval because at the time we had a purchase and sale agreement with a national gas station user who has since been acquired. You can guess who that is, now Maverick. So this deal kind of went on the back burner for them, and we kind of had to, re-plan our thinking for what this corner would be. We got an enticing LOI from a big group that it wants to be in this corner, and so we kind of designed this building for them, and so they'll be on that end cap drive-through, and then we're looking for a different national gas station user to go on the other corner on pod 39. So that's why this corner wasn't approved with pads H, I, E, and F, because we were going to sell it. Now we're not, and so we need to get the site plan approved before we move forward on this building. And to answer the questions on that top left portion, that is a patio. In their LOI, they requested a larger area for a patio and potentially covered, and they want to make it nice. And so I agree that a pedestrian access from the University of Utah Salt Lake Community College side as they're coming up here would be great. And so we've told staff that we'll look to accommodate that as much as we can, whether it's stairs or a sidewalk of some kind. We'll look to accommodate that, although it's not required.
Okay. And then do you have any additional information on how the sign will work on the corner?
Yeah, so there's currently, the monument sign's already installed.
Okay.
Yep, so it's just sitting there vacant until we get the building built and the tenants on there, so it's already there, installed.
Okay.
And where is it in location of this site
So
plan?
it's on the top right of the page on the corner there. It's not shown in this landscaping field, but it's on the top right of the page on the corner, on top of the retaining wall.
So the retaining wall's in place?
The retaining wall's in, yep.
So there won't be some of those plantings in the corner if there's a sign there?
Maybe one or two. I mean, it's a pretty small monument
Footprint.
sign. It's not too big. So most of the planting will be there still.
Okay.
Can you tell us any more about what kind of tenant will be there?
Global coffee user.
Okay.
You can take a guess at who that would be.
I'm just curious because the patio will be there right next to the drive-through and next to the parking. So will there just be some way to
There'll
separate?
probably be some kind of, in their LOI, they have a couple different versions of what they like to see. Whether they have one that's like black gates, like little walls, and then some of them are covered, some of them are not, to kind of create separation from, the parking and the drive-through. They're pretty good about keeping that, kind of secluded as much as it can be as a patio. So there are a couple different versions that we'll work through with them, but we eliminated a couple parking spots for that, and so.
Yeah, as it's shown, just, judging by the parking, it's only about 20 foot by 16 feet.
Yeah. And that may get a little bit bigger or smaller, but I think we have a parking spot or two to work with if needed. So this is just the first kind of concept for them.
About how many cars is your stack depth here?
I want to say 10. I think they like to see between 10 and 12 or something like that. There was a different version where the drive-thru's on the top of the page, and so it kind of wraps around more. But that kind of made a wonky building with a multi-tenant. And so this kind of worked better with what our architect had already kind of done for us on the 6,000 square foot building. And so this is kind of a less wonky. The other version is kind of like a long and skinny model that jets out more. And so this looks better, and I think it'll still provide enough stacking for them.
Okay.
So where's the obviously this is the drive-through, but where's the window located itself?
Right side of the page, top right.
Oh, it is?
Where it
Okay.
jets out.
Where that pop out is.
Yep.
Okay. So they're taking over the north portion,
Yeah,
and then
20,
the south
about,
portion will be another.
yeah, so about 2,300 square feet of the 6,000 square feet will be this tenant.
Okay. And then obviously your drive-through ordering board is that south portion.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I do like the wider corners on the drive-through. Maybe my truck will fit through there.
You can fit a truck very easily through there, yeah.
Any additional questions? All right. Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Any additional discussion with the commission?
I did have one question for the city real quick, is just to make sure that the elevations, the percentages of stone that we have called out, fit this MDA.
Yeah, so those are, this MDA has different standards than our city standards do in terms of the 60%. So these elevations do meet the MDA standards.
And do
Very
you know
similar
what
to
those
the other
MDA
tree.
standards were?
Sorry?
Do you know what the MDA standards were for the stone or?
I'm not sure if there's a percentage or if there's just a type.
Okay.
This is very similar to the other buildings that are out there, though.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve item 4.2, consideration of final building elevations and landscape plans for commercial development.
Second.
Motion by Brody, second by Forrest. We'll take a vote. Start with Brody.
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Daryl? Sorry, Andrea?
Yes.
Well, I'm not very good at being chair here. Maybe Andy will be back. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
So
with
the-
staff's recommendations. I guess I need to say that. Thank you.
With staff's okay. So motion is approved. Thank you. Let's move on to item 5.1. This is an amendment to the zoning map. This is a public hearing. So let me read the public comment policy and procedure. The purpose of public comment is to allow citizens to address items on the agenda. Citizens requesting to address the commission will be asked to complete a written comment form and present it to the city recorder. In general, the chair will allow an individual 3 minutes to address the commission. A spokesperson recognized as representing a group in attendance may be allowed up to 5 minutes. This policy also applies to all public hearings. That's our fine text.
Okay,
All right.
that would be me. So this next item is a legislative item.
All right.
It is for a rezone request.
Uh-oh. And after I did my best legalese description as fast as I could.
Yep. And this rezone request is for some properties located off of 134th and Rose Canyon Road approximately. Here's an area map of the 3 subject properties. As you can see here, the current zoning is A143. Little background, outside of being A143, the general plan, the future land use map does designate this area as neighborhood 1. There's 3 properties that will be affected by this rezone, or that are included in this rezone, totaling about 7 acres. So this proposal consists of rezoning the majority of this property to R110, and then a remaining portion of, to A110. The intent of this rezone is the applicant is proposing a future subdivision, residential subdivision, consisting of 11 lots. As I mentioned, the future land use map does designate this as neighborhood 1. Neighborhood 1 does support the following zones: R110, R115, R121, A110, and et cetera. The zones the applicant is requesting are within the bounds of the neighborhood 1 zoning designations. Again, staff, we do look at several things when we do look at rezones. One's compliance with the general plan. As here, one of the statements made in the general plan is, to provide a mix of lot sizes and et cetera in new residential developments. In this case, it's similar to what the applicant is requesting. Again, we do look at, how that rezone will impact the adjacent properties. Staff has looked at that and didn't see any significant impacts that would be imposed on adjacent properties. Any minor impacts would be resolved through the subdivision process. We can address some of those concerns if they do come up this evening. Again, so here's the proposal. Like I said, majority of it, 6.5 acres approximately, will be R110. The remaining portion, this 0.42 acres, will be A110. This is at the request of the property owner there. They would like to maintain animal rights on that property. So the applicant is obliging the resident and requesting that property to be rezoned to A110. Here's just a conceptual plan of the subdivision, which is proposed. As you can see, it's 11 lots. Again, we've kind of discussed the access to this other lot during the work meeting. Now, one thing to take consideration is that these 2 lots here, the remaining lots out of this rezone, are not going to be part of the subdivision. They'll just be zoned as R110 and R115. Again, this is at the request of the property owners, as they've made negotiations with the applicant with some land exchanges. They'll be residing on these properties, and these are the zoning designations they requested for their properties. With that being said, staff does recommend a positive recommendation to the city council. If you guys have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer those.
Can you go back to the plat, please? Yeah. So the existing home to the east, is it landlocked without that driveway?
Yes, it would be landlocked without that driveway.
Okay, and is that driveway sufficient for emergency vehicles
And that's something we'll discuss through the subdivision plat process with UFA. So those will be some things, yeah, some concerns that will be addressed.
Did we get confirmation from all of the landowners that this is their desire to rezone?
So I have spoken with the property owners. I believe they are here as well, so they can speak on their behalf during the comment section.
And then also, another thing that I read in the packet was how will it impact the current homeowners? What will their ability to subdivide be in the future?
Right, so you're speaking of that lot to the east, correct? Right. So, looking at how this is subdivision, the conceptual subdivision plan is proposed with that 20, 25-foot access there, they would not be able to subdivide that property in the future because they wouldn't be able to provide the adequate access to put in they need a public right-of-way, like a road standard of 53 feet minimum, so.
What about the R110 property? Would they be able to subdivide?
Yeah, so, and that has been worked with the applicant with the subdivision, and they kind of they laid out the property, so the R110 section, they could potentially split that into 3 additional lots, two accessing off the actual new road they're putting there, and then the lot on the south side would be accessed off an existing approach there off of Rose Canyon Road.
Was it kind of going along with what Heather was saying? Was it discussed to just have that road stub off and go straight through Lot 5?
So, and again, that's something we've discussed with the applicant. Initially, the feedback he got from the people, the residents who lived there was they didn't want to see any additional. They had no intentions of, I guess, subdividing their property, and they were comfortable with what they were proposed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Thank you.
And again, the applicant is here if you have any questions. And I'm not sure when you open the public comment section, but it's up to you guys.
Well, I was going to say if we would like to invite the owner or the applicant, if they'd like to. You don't have to, but you can.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to meet before you. My name's Alan Prince. I'm the developer. My company is called Monterey Properties. I want to clarify a couple of points that have come up. This property to the east of us, where you see the road stubbed in, is astonishingly similar to one I developed in Draper. Right now, the family receives access to the home down the back side of what you see pictured here as lots 1, 2, 3, 4, and through the detention basin. So they have it's 700 plus feet long. They haven't had a clean car in 30 years. It's dust, it's sleet, it's water, it's gravel. So what we discussed with them is folding that 25-foot easement into these new lots that would then be landscaped and fenced. And then we would provide them this 25-foot easement coming off a public road and fully, and down that lane would be fully landscaped and asphalted. So the asphalting, the improvement of that lane back to their home will be done to meet all of the standards of both the city and fire department. It doesn't show it here, but we'll put a nice hammerhead for them, and we'll have that designated for us by the staff. Their property, the slope of the ground is away from 6400. It goes east from 6400 from Rose Canyon Road. So when you get back into these back areas, access out for sewer and so on and storm drain is basically impossible. It's going the opposite direction. So their property will be one day developed. Now, perhaps not where their home sits. They would, section that off as a lot perhaps. But the rest of the ground would be subdivided at some future date, but its access, its drainage and utilities would come from the east. So it would just be assembled as we have done and shown in this instance. We have also in the portion and the families that have the green and the yellow property represented here. Part of the agreement we made with them was in the sectioning of these, we actually traded, we needed some ground to bring the road in. We traded that to the family that has the yellow parcel and gave them quite a bit larger parcel than we received as part of that trade. And in doing that, combining it with the home, with the parcel that they presently have their home built on, we also laid out for them how in the future they could do conforming building lots and do either 1, 2, or 3 and then they would all be conforming and they would not have a problem going forward if they wanted to subdivide that at some point in the future. The parcel in green, the owner is also here, and these have become very dear friends of ours. We're grateful for working with them. He and his wife have lived in that home for many years. It's specially constructed to meet their family's needs, and they wanted to keep the agricultural designation versus the residential designation just for their own use, and they gave value to that in their family's lifestyle, so that's why it is a little different than the rest. Any questions? Anything else I can answer for you?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, with that, we will open the meeting for a public hearing.
Michael Josephson. I'm the A110 lot, and we've built the house. My wife has multiple sclerosis, so we built the house special for her, so we have ramps. The house has got special shower, walkway inside, wider hallways and stuff. And I'm not able to use the balance of the yard with all that's going on in my life. And what Alan's proposed will actually help me, and because I'm having to mow that back part of my acre, and it takes hours to maintain, so I don't have to worry about fire and stuff like that. So this is going to be a blessing for our family. So thank you.
Thank you.
Pregnant pause. Well, not seeing any additional comment, to have a motion to close.
Is there anyone online?
Oh, good question.
Anyone online? No.
Nope.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Second by Tara. So, let's see.
All in favor?
All in favor. There we go.
Aye.
Aye. All right. See, any discussion amongst the commission?
I think that, the fact that we're just doing the zoning in this aspect, I think it's pretty clear. I think the city will have to kind of specify, especially when they get to the subdivision portion and kind of land swaps, whether that qualifies as subdividing some of the lots, because the A110, it's half the size. So they're kind of moving some of their property, and the R110 is changing their property lines too. So whether it says it's not part of the subdivision proposal, but obviously they're subdividing them. So, but that's for
You're
future
just saying
discussion.
with the
subdivision
boundary
comes.
changes, that the boundaries will have to
Yeah,
align
yeah.
with the new zoning.
Yeah, it's not a clear cut. these two lots are staying as they are, because they're not.
The city does, city ordinances do allow a meets and bounds change in property lines without having to subdivide the
Okay.
existing lots. So
Okay.
Okay.
they would, for future development, they would probably need to have a formal subdivision come forward.
Right.
But, you know, for the rezone, I mean, both of the lots meet the standard of the zone
Okay.
by that way, so.
And these are meets and bounds lots to start with, right?
Right, yeah.
All right, well, I will make a motion to recommend approval to the city council for item 5.1.
Second.
Maybe second. All right. Let's have a vote. Andrea,
Yes.
Daryl,
Yes.
Kara,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Forrest,
Yes.
and Brody.
Yes.
Recommendation will be forwarded to the council. With that, let's jump to item 5.2 on the agenda. This is for an amendment to the South Hills Master Development. This will be presented by Clint.
I'm sure Mike wishes he was here. Maybe not. So this is for the South Hills Fifth Amendment. This is a project that we've been working on with the applicant for quite some time now, several months. As a commission, we've been up on the property. They've kind of walked us through how the property is going to develop, what lots will go where, and what types of development we can anticipate and see. So a lot of this plan it's obviously been changing since the time of application. With the Panorama Master Plan or Master Development Plan, there's been a lot of coordination in terms of, there have been some property exchanges and boundary changes in terms of what goes in the South Hills MDA, what goes in the Panorama MDA. And that's finally coming, that's kind of all being fleshed out now, and these are ready to move forward. With that being said, there are still some considerations that we would like to look into before final approval. Those are things that we can work through the process after Planning Commission makes a recommendation, and make sure that those elements get included or reviewed or addressed before the City Council makes their final decision on this project. So when this South Hills MDA was approved, a lot of it was based on compliance with the East Area General Plan, which is before you now. Just to kind of give you an idea of the area where the South Hills MDA falls, you can see these black lines. That's the boundary that we're looking at now. In terms of compliance with the East Area General Plan, from what they're proposing, it does look like they are likely complying with that plan in terms of density and those types of any other issues for the general plan. There was at the time of approval, there was a PUD that was approved along with that. It has several recommendations and requirements in there. Some of them addressed open space, some have addressed the overall density. So there are some things that still need to be fleshed out from this original approval. This is a document that we would like to see incorporated into the overall MDA, so it can be referenced easily and is accessible. This is the original land use plan that was proposed back in 2009, and having looked at other visuals of the property, you can easily identify how much it's changed over time. This is what's currently in place now, and again, as we have spoken with the property owner or with the applicant, they've addressed areas that they're plussing and minusing. One of them is on the southwest corner of this development, the Staker property there that they're acquiring, or they're under agreement to acquire. So the proposal, the amendment, this Fifth Amendment proposal includes the removal of property, again, addition of property like we talked about, amendments to the future land use map for the undeveloped parcels, some technical guideline requirements as well. So this is their proposed land use plan. Again, in that on the bottom of the screen, you can see that hatched area. That's the Staker property that will be added to their overall development. And they have revised some of the pods, and pod numbers and densities and stuff like that have been slightly modified. There is an area up on just right adjacent to Mountain View Corridor. On the south side of Mountain View Corridor, you can see in pod, I want to say it's pod 5A is a commercial area, which hasn't been considered before, but that would need to and again, these changes to the general plan and the zoning can take place once the MDA is approved as well. So with all that being said, I mean, we walked through a lot of information really fast, but our recommendations is to obviously hold this public hearing today. If there's any other elements that the commission would like us to look into as it moves towards the city council, we're glad to do that. Some of the issues that we're looking at, as I mentioned before, is just compliance with the East Herriman General Plan. Demonstrates compliance with the PUD in terms of density and open space provisions. There have been some tables and graphs and stuff shown that are that show what potentially could be built, and we're just asking for a simplification of what will actually be built in terms of units and those kinds of things. There is a new land use, and we looked at this the last time they came in to present in a work session meeting for this. It's a medium density small lot. Some of the regulations on that are fairly minimal, and we would like to see maybe a little more, a few more standards to help kind of direct what that medium density small lot development will look like, and also where it will take place. And right now, they have the ability to apply that in several different areas, and we would maybe like to see that kind of honed in on a little bit and looked at a little bit closer, and maybe specifying only specific areas where that medium density small lot development can take place, adding in some architectural elements as well as we see in lots of other MDAs would be another recommendation from staff. And then again, including the PUD in the overall MDA. They're showing Pod 1, which is open space that's just adjacent to the Zion's Bank soccer fields. That is an area that, based on some of the land surveys that were part of the application or part of the original approval, that's not an area that was typically considered. They have shown that Pod 1 in other land use maps. So it's not on the current land use map now. So we would request that that pod be removed from the overall land use master plan amendment. And then, again, just addressing the open space, making sure that they're meeting the standards set forth in the PUD agreement. Then one thing that we would also require the applicant is the MDA gets approved. So as this Fifth Amendment gets taken action on by the City Council, whatever those elements end up being, that all of those elements get folded into the existing MDA document itself, so that from a staffing perspective, it's having to look at several different MDAs and figure out, well, what took place when and what standards are we looking at for this area. But if everything is put back and restated in an overall MDA draft, that would be something that would be beneficial both to the applicant in terms of ease of process and to the city as well in staff reviews. So I have spoken all too much tonight, so if there's any questions, great. If not, I'll sit down. The applicant is here. I'm sure that they would love to. They've got a presentation as well that they might want to walk through with the commission. So.
Okay. Questions for Clint?
So lot 1, that open space, that's not part of the calculation of the overall open space for development, correct? I think that's what they said previously.
They're showing it as part of the the overall MDA space, but we're requesting that that be taken out of that calculation.
Okay.
So I do have one question. This may not be an MDA question. So do they have a method or means to have two ways to egress in the early phases of construction?
I know that a lot of the development will be taking place with coordination with Panorama. And so you're talking about road
Roads,
networks and access and stuff. So that will be,
So if there's a fire in the hills and it's coming, you know,
Right.
is there two ways that they can get out?
that will be, so when we get subdivision requests for this area, they'll only be able to develop up to a certain amount of lots without additional access. So, and that's maybe something that they probably thought further ahead than I'm speaking now, but yeah, there are requirements in place that they can only develop so much until they have a certain amount of access.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay.
Cool. Well, we'd like to invite the applicant up to address the board.
Thank you, Clint. Thank you, commissioners, for having us. Clint, would you mind putting up that presentation that we had? A lot of what you'll see in this presentation, it's only 8 slides. It's very similar to what Clint put up here for you, but we'll walk you through it very fast. Do we need to ask you to change slides, or am I using this? This one right here? Oh, that's why. Understood. Okay, so as you can see, this is kind of the overall map. This isn't the actual land use master plan, but it shows a little bit more detail in terms of the number of units that we have in each pod. That's one of the things that the commissioners asked for. It also takes into consideration the new Pod 5B and Pod 5A, which is the commercial. And then, as you can see, the outline of the panorama units on there as well, just to the left and north of us. This is just a brief history. You've all obviously have a copy of this presentation. This tells you the history of South Hills over the course of the last roughly 15 years. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but you can see how many times we've amended the MDA, based on various issues that we've had over the course of time. As Clint pointed out earlier, this is the existing MDA, land use master plan, that's in force right now. This is the one that we had originally issued with this particular amendment, number 5, that shows that, I believe, Pod 20, which is the Staker property, and very similar is the next slide, which shows the land swap, which gives us Pod 5B, Pod 23, which is part of DAI's property, and then Pod 5A, which was a piece of commercial that was requested of us by some of the council members, so we, of course, obliged. We go to this next page, and it kind of outlines the land swap that we're engaged in with DAI. Pod 6 goes to them, Pod 23 goes to us. Pod 5A goes to us, and then that orange portion that's actually not labeled, that's just to the northwest of Pod 5A goes to DAI. The other orange portion goes to DAI, and then Pod 5B is sort of expanded in that salmon color a little bit over toward the east. This is the land use master plan comparison table, which I think we've gone through a few times. Last time we went through this particular spreadsheet, there was a formula error in one of them, which has been changed. If you look at the unit distribution estimate on the top, the green delta or change column all the way down at the bottom, minus 191 is the corrected number. Before it was a little bit more than that, but we did correct it. And that's pretty much it. We'd love to answer any questions. I know that there are probably a few, but we have gone through this probably 3 or 4 times. I think 2 of these particular meetings and then a couple meetings over in the Fort Herriman conference room. So if there are any issues you'd like to discuss, Reed and I, our engineer, is more than happy to discuss those with you.
Anything? I just appreciate you guys working with the other developers.
Sure, no problem at all. I mean,
And all
we're
the landowners
all
that
in
you
this
can
together.
combine.
So, I mean, it's definitely not, I for one, it's definitely one for all.
How many landowners did you guys have to bring together for this?
Well, we actually own the bulk of our property, but we did have to work with the Whedons, and we had to work with, who's the other one? I can't remember off the top of my head. We had to work with the Whedons on an outfall, an easement outfall along Mountain View Corridor that goes into Porter Rockwell.
We've been working with Staker, of course.
Of course, yes.
And then there's a small landowner that's right next to Whedon's that we've provided a stub to so that they're
Yep.
not landlocked.
Yeah, which is, I believe, Derek Anderson. And one of the questions that was brought up earlier when Clinton was up here is there only one exit of this development? There currently is until we work with DAI to actually get the one that goes adjacent to Pod 5A into Mountain View Corridor. But our first phase of our development is Pod 16 and Pod 17. Then will be Pod 15 and 14. And by the time we've gotten to even starting in Pod 15, that road will be completely stubbed through DAI, through their property into Mountain View Corridor. So
16, 17 will be single access only until the road gets built all the way.
Well, we've been working with the fire marshal on the width of that road, and it's extra wide because it's going to be single for a minute.
Yeah.
And so because it's so wide and because there are several intersections where turnarounds can be accommodated, we've been working closely with him on how this will work out through time. And
Okay.
he's been on board with our approach. So it is one, but it's extra wide, so it serves the purpose of more than one.
Okay. Thank you.
should be noted that we did see the 8 recommendations that the staff, that's in the staff report, and we are more than willing to work with the city staff and with the council on making sure that those come to fruition to the best of their ability.
Been a lot of work here.
Yeah, a lot of work.
Any additional comment?
I'll move to make a motion. Oh, okay.
I was going to say you're allowed to take a seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
gotta
further comment,
close.
any discussion amongst us?
I just had a quick question. So the MDA that's attached to the packet, do they have to meet all the requirements that are in there, or?
The MDA?
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
okay. So
yeah.
my question was, there's a section that addresses retail and commercial office, and then a separate section that addresses business and industrial park. Are there going to be light industrial and warehousing and distribution, or has that changed?
No, I think this is a very residential area. There's a one area of commercial just off of Mountain View Corridor, so I don't think that the industrial is anticipated.
Okay.
It looks like there's a lot of recommendations from staff on what you want to see from them. Do you feel like we have a sufficient amount of information to even move this forward to council?
Well, that's largely your purview to assess. We do feel like, this is an ongoing process, and in meetings with the city council, they're very aware that this is, still a work in progress. And so there's still modifications that may be made to the MDA as it moves forward. But the recommendations that are in there now, if we move forward with with those recommendations in place, that they address those issues, then staff is, we feel comfortable with the recommendation tonight. Those recommendations will basically ensure that our concerns are met before it gets to, or goes through final approval by the city council.
Like, excuse me, for number 4, like how is that interpreted?
Could you bring the recommendations back up?
That
on
was
the
the
screen-
medium
screen there,
density,
Mitch?
small lot design standards as directed by planning commission specify specific
Exactly what was
PODs
that?
where the new land use would be applied.
So right now, like I mentioned in the presentation, their design standards for that medium lot, small density.
Let's go with, we get it.
Whatever that area is, some of the requirements are a little skim, so we'd just like to see, maybe some architectural requirements put in. There was one provision in there that talks about lot size, and I think reading the ordinance, it seems to be kind of a little contradictory because they do require a lot minimum and a lot depth. So there seems like there should be a minimum lot size that should be assessed. But just looking at the overall area and maybe drilling down to specific areas instead of allowing this type of development in the entire project, but drilling down and finding some more specific and the most appropriate sites for those developments to take place.
Looks like we would like to call Blake to the.
Just on the medium density small lot item, the main purpose for my concern on it was allowed along the main road, and the width of the lots made it so there was some concern that people might be backing onto the main road to get out of their garage. We've worked with the developer. They're coming up with a design to kind of share driveways between the two lots so that you can turn around the car and come out forwards out of each house. So that was the main concern, is where that's applied. The way it's currently written in the draft MDA amendment is that they can apply it anywhere where that medium density zone is, or I can't remember which zone it is, but they can apply that medium density small lot anywhere. We just wanted to make sure there was some assurance that we could get driveways in such a manner along the main road that cars wouldn't have to back out. So we're currently working on that, and that's something that we're comfortable working through as we go through the city council process with it.
Probably open it up for a public hearing.
Sounds good. With that, let's open this up for public hearing. Is there anyone online? With that, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second. Okay.
Second by Brody.
Got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. With that, public hearing is closed. Any final comments?
I'm just glad that Heather brought that up about the small density lot, medium density small lot design standards. Yeah, if you guys feel comfortable that you can work through that, that makes me feel better. I was like, where it said as directed by planning commission, was unsure what that was.
Well, I was thinking back to our conversations and thinking, like, was it Adam? Like, did Adam say something? Because I know that he had a lot of comments on this item. But that's a tricky one. I mean, is the commission gonna sit and say, hey, we want more architecture? Like, I don't know that will be their concern.
Yeah, I remember the last time we talked about this, one of the major concerns was, especially the small lot, medium density small lot, was that we didn't want it to look like it was just garage after garage after garage after garage with like a side entry on all of them. And so coming up with a solution, both in site plan and in elevations, to accomplish that without making it look like just a whole bunch of garages connected. That'd be key.
I don't know how we move forward. Thoughts?
Well, it's hard because we don't have a lot of design standards that we can apply with the changes that have happened from Utah legislature.
We do with this, though, because it's
with the
under
MDA.
MDA.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll look to Clint, what you would suggest.
So if you want to address, certain issues in that medium density small lot standards that you would like staff to address with the applicant, that's something that we could move forward with. Like if you wanted to get options to minimize garages along those, or they have some current setbacks for, so right now that the provision that the garage is set back further. I think the front yard was 12 feet and the garage setback was 18 feet. That's one provision that they have in there currently. I don't think it's unusual, you know, with a lot of our MDAs to have some kind of architectural standards. Olympia or a lot of our other, both of those have architectural standards built into them. They have to have so many different types of elements on each side of the building. Both of those MDAs and propose something to the applicant that is in that same.
Maybe it's something a little easier where we just ask for a front porch, a covered front porch of a certain size at each unit.
Yeah,
And the
my
front
concern
porch
is though that
becomes
they
the
do
focus.
the same kind on every one, instead of doing a variation.
So there's nothing like that in there right now? That you're saying, like, we could look at the other ones from Olympia and the others, but because there's not anything in this agreement right now like that,
Right, currently there's not a lot of architectural standards in the medium density, small lot section. That is something that, you know, we feel as a staff that should be addressed, and we can, you know, I think, given the other MDAs, you know, the interest of the Planning Commission, you know, your comments from previous discussions, you know, I think that that's something that we can work with the applicant on in terms of formulating something that will be desirable.
and so if we pass it on to City Council, you'll look at it with them, but if we continue it, then they'll come back and we could flesh it out here, is that correct?
Maybe back on this front porch idea. And I kind of looked to Forest, but, you know, what if we were just to put in a requirement and it's as simple as saying we have to have, say, a 40 square foot covered front porch, right? And that's not very big.
No, but it's big enough
To be an element.
and to break
Then,
up.
right, then they can come up with whatever it looks like to meet the.
Right. Well, I think we just need to make sure that there's enough depth in the driveways themselves for a vehicle at 18 foot.
Yeah, usually you want 21.
Yeah, I mean, if that's including any kind of sidewalks or anything that's within that setback, I mean.
Thank
then
you,
you're-
F-150 Super Cab.
Yeah, then you're in trouble. Which we've run into in other developments is when they've gone short, you have the trucks overhanging into the streets and stuff like that, so. Not that I'm saying everyone should have a truck, but we want to at least accommodate as much as we can.
I mean, one of the elements that I like when it comes to small lots is just how they orient the garage. If it's set back from the main house, if it's oriented, you know, to the side where we have additional windows where the garage is. Just a variety of different type of garage
Yeah, but these
placement,
are
I guess is what I would say.
These are what, 8th acre lots?
They're pretty small lots.
Because it's
Small
eight
lots.
units per. Yeah, they're pretty small, so you don't have a whole lot of room to.
For me, like the garages is a big part of it. If you
Yeah.
have garage, and if you,
But if it's broken up by a porch.
if you kind of tell them that they need to make 3 variations of garage, where one's set back, maybe one's oriented, where it's, what is it, parallel to the
I think,
street.
yeah,
And to
there's a
some
lot they
degree-
can do.
Yeah, but to some degree, I think that's in their own best interest. As long as we require a porch, then that becomes the element that gets the
Yeah.
focus, and not the garage door.
Is that enough, though? And would it be better to wait and study it a little bit, or just do something quickly like this?
Well, I think this, staff understands our concerns and can kind of push that forward, especially looking at the other MDAs and stuff that we've approved.
That's what I worry about, though, is that these MDAs, like, these are forever.
Yeah.
And this doesn't expire
Doesn't
till
come back.
2037, I think. So we have to live with this.
Does it come back to bite us?
Yeah, I
Well,
know.
the size
it
of
to be clear.
kind of what we were talking about, one of the like placemaking It's like, what is your design standards and how are you going to incorporate it throughout the whole master plan? So you know you're in this development that's that unique, and it just doesn't look like, oh, here's another modern type home that we see everywhere.
Well, and the interesting part in what we were looking at is a lot of the facades were actually fairly uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They created a boundary, but they were fairly uniform in and of themselves. So it didn't take a lot of design standard to create the overall feel. Looks like we would like to invite Blake up again.
Coming back up again. I just had a request that if you do choose to pass it along city council and you want to incorporate these items in, just be really clear, porches or side garages, or if you do continue it, be really clear. I think you're going to do the same thing regardless what you do and where it goes. So, but if it's with staff, just be really clear in the motion, bullet list them, I guess, so to say, so that we can know how to address it when we get there. Yeah, thank you.
If we continued it, how long would it be before we could put it back on an agenda? If we were going to compare other agreements and look at it and discuss requirements and definitions?
So it would take them obviously addressing your concerns and then coming back to the city with those. So, I don't know, I anticipate probably, maybe they could address them fairly quickly and we could have it back in a month. We're setting our agenda for, or our staff reports for the March 20th meeting are due tomorrow, so probably not in the next 2 weeks, but soonest it could come back is in a month.
Can we go back to the map? The one that shows medium
Staffs.
density.
Oh, just how much there is.
Yeah. I just want to see the placement too.
So it's this salmon color.
And Tara, I believe, but for comparison, I think the lots in Juniper Point are 1/8 acre. So it's about that size.
That's helpful.
Is there any option to approve it and then ask that the staff bring back like images of what that type of small lot looks like? And have a discussion on that? And have a discussion, because I think that's where we're stuck. Not really the zoning part piece of it, just what does it look like?
It's gonna get lost.
Yeah.
So the medium lot, or this medium density small lot development can take place in anywhere where you have a high or medium density. So in the low density areas, so like pods 14, 13, 21, like those areas wouldn't be eligible for that, except on special request that I think has to be approved by the council. Otherwise, those other lots would be eligible for those types of development.
One other note for you, Tara. Juniper Point also had a requirement in the HOA for 50 square foot porches. So, that's why everybody has a porch there.
Oh, really?
Is that the only thing that we can really add though? Like, I don't want to say just like, here's your one thing that you have to do for all of them. Like, could we create more things? Like more options, because we want to give them
Right.
choices. Like one size isn't going to fit everything, especially with these medium.
Well, and I'm wondering if there's something in addition to porches. Like, I guess I don't know enough about the options to say, let's make sure we add this, and this. I don't want to impede the developer's work, but if we're adjusting it and it's sticking in there, I just want to make sure we get it right. So.
I'm thinking about just small houses like this that we already have. I think Daybreak's a good example where the porch element does add character to these smaller homes, right? And then I think how the garages are attached or detached from the main building does a lot for it, that they're set back, they're not up on the same plane as the rest of the house.
If there's certain elements of design that you would like us to look at and address specifically, like, you could say, front-facing facades or four-sided architecture, I'm sure that, that they're probably implementing some fairly high material standards. But, if you wanted us to look at, materials or something as well, we could, those are all things that, as staff, I think that we could probably accommodate and look into. So if there's certain, like I said, if there's certain design standards or design aspects that you would like us to look at, instead of, trying to come up with right now, like, well, we want 3 windows on this side and 2 on this side, but, like overall design, like four-sided architecture,
Yeah.
streetscape, roof pitch, materials, those kinds of things. I mean, so far I've got things that you would like to address are, obviously the setbacks that we talked about, and then adding an option or adding a requirement for a porch element on the front of it. I'm hearing four-sided architecture is maybe something that you want also to be considered. If there's other elements that you would like us to look at or review with the applicant, we can do that. And then we could bring those back and present those to the commission in a work session. If you had, further recommendations, that we could go back and address those with the developer as well as it moves forward.
I know I have a tough time requiring specific design elements.
Right.
You have to use a classical column here.
Yep.
Well, they're going to make sure that looks pretty bad when they put it on there.
Right.
So I'm not a fan of requiring.
No, so if we can go as broad
Specific
as
element.
possible and say things like pedestrian-oriented front facades, that's,
I also have garage orientation, sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, anytime we can have the garage be set back from the house, whether, the drive actually continues along the side of the house and the garage is separate in the back, or whatever, with these small lots.
Are you just,
There's just not much space for that.
Yeah, that's the problem, is there's not.
are you just kind of driving for a variable look as you're driving down the road? You're not, I mean, I was fine with it until you mentioned the garages. Then all I could see was, tenant housing for miles.
Right.
So, I'm not an architect. I don't know how to add that flavor onto the building, but
Right.
in general, I agree with the idea of staggering them so they're not all uniform. And moreover, the depth of the driveway is really too small, 18 foot.
Yeah.
We do have provisions in current city ordinance that you cannot place the same house design within 3 lots of another.
Well, that would help.
That will help stagger those.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But are these same houses the ones that are going to have the double driveway, so they're not backing out onto the main road, or is this something different?
Some of those will be those same ones.
That's what I worry about with the short driveway, because then you're gonna have people parking in the streets.
So we can address, driveway setback is something that we can easily address, just adjusting the number from 18 to 24 or whatever the requirement is.
And we're talking about all these salmon-colored pods.
Right. And the dark and the orange ones.
And the developer has stated that they're willing to increase the driveway length to, 22 feet or whatever. We were doing some research the other day looking at the average, or the most popular vehicle is the Ford F-150 crew cab, and the length of it is like 20.7 feet. And if you go up to the F-350, I think it's like 21, so 22 feet's probably about the minimum driveway length you'd want to go. And as we've talked with the developer, they're okay to do that in these areas.
That's assuming if you don't want to walk around your vehicle.
What's that?
So that's assuming that you don't want to walk around your vehicle.
Out the front of it.
In front of it, or you can only go behind it because you're right up against your garage door.
Yeah, the 350 is probably, the 150 gives you an extra couple feet, if you, or, yeah, foot and a half or whatever, so yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you gotta.
You get to admire your car every time you walk around.
Well, I'm kind of okay with leaving it with staff to see what they can come up with, because frankly, I just don't know. I know I don't like the idea of uniformity all the way through this, but I don't know what the options are.
I like adding the driveway length of 22 feet minimum.
And the porch, and then if we could talk about it in a work session, I would personally feel more informed too.
Yeah, I think that that's something that as we, are maybe negotiating this with the applicant, we could come and say, okay, these are, well, this is how far we've come, and maybe get a set of input from the commission, going back and working with the developer on what they can.
If they were to bring the elevations back,
Yeah.
at a later point.
Yeah, can we approve the amendment, but still be able
No.
to do some of that
No.
work afterwards? No.
No, with the new legislation that they passed, you can't.
Well, that's right, that new one is like,
You have to either continue it or you have to let it go.
This session,
Mhm.
when's the effective date?
When he told us, I don't know. No,
Most of them are July 1st.
I think it was like
but,
January 1st,
yeah.
but yeah.
Oh, and then maybe last
Yeah.
session.
I have the same feeling. I'd like to see this come back with elevations.
Just a lot of area, if we take into account all the salmon and all the orange. Yeah, again, I have visions of tenant housing throughout the whole thing, and I don't think any of us want that. I don't think that would actually happen, but I understand that we need something in writing that
Would prevent it.
leads that,
Yeah.
prevents that.
I know, I like the idea of, and maybe we require a front porch, and that front porch sits proud of the garage, by 2 feet. And at that point, if that's in front, then what you're gonna see is the porches.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to do porches, I hate to require it be too specific, because then it makes it worse.
Yeah.
It really does.
But maybe they can come back with some better ideas.
There were some small lot design standards in, anyways, it had those kinds of requirements in it where it talked about, having the garage, having a porch out. Well, the garage couldn't be the most prominent feature, right? It had to be set back a few feet from the front of the house, and whether it was a porch or a housing element or something like that. Kinds of things met
Yeah.
look at.
I think that'd be beneficial to look at.
Proper fields, that's what it was.
Is it difficult to have the porch come out in front with a shared driveway, or is that not an issue? I can't,
I don't think that's in
that's not
the
something.
design, they just have
Yeah.
to design the house to accommodate that, but that's a pretty typical development style, I think. I'll let the architects speak to that maybe.
Yeah. It's a typical requirement too for most jurisdictions that the garage can't be at least aligned with the front face or in front of it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm your man to offer a recommendation, so I'm kind of looking at, you can't, so I'm kind of looking at Forrest.
Yeah. No, I think we should probably just continue it, in my opinion. And discuss it in a word meeting and then go from there.
Well, if we, let's say we want a porch, so we put that into our recommendation, want the garage setback, put that in. What, I guess those are the things that I would think would help make it a better lot, like small lot.
Is a small lot conducive to staggering the setbacks?
I think it helps a lot to break up so it doesn't feel like a wall. And so the garage So it feels like people live there, not garages, or I mean cars.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want them to end up looking like just row after row of
Yeah.
duplexes.
That's why I like even oriented the garage, if it's like set back or if it's turned to the side where you get extra windows that front the road.
Yeah, you'd have to look at the lot map to see on these smaller lots, if you could.
Right, so we're trying to come up with ways to prevent, obviously, subpar, that's a great way of putting it, subpar, site planning and site locations, without getting into the specific site maps and site layouts, because that's not what we're looking at right now.
Well, I mean, I don't want to hold up the developers either, but it just sounds like it's more prudent for us to give this some better and in-depth thought on how the aesthetics of it would appear.
Do they have that already? Like what this type of small lot would look like?
I didn't see anything included in the MDA unless I missed something.
Does the developer have the ability to speak again?
I think it would warrant if you could like to come back up and make some additional comments, that would be appreciated.
A couple things. I totally understand your concerns. Having it continued again is not something that we're super psyched about, but I also understand your concerns. As we pointed out, I'm willing to concede the 18-foot setback to a 22-foot setback. I'm willing to give you the porch. There's no question about it. I'm even willing to go so far as to say that the double lots will only be on South Hills Drive, or Soleil Hills Drive, excuse me, specifically in 8A. And I'm sorry, and 14 and 15. Those are much larger lots. So everything from 16 and 17 along all the way through Soleil Hills Drive. I'm not going to do it in Pod 11 or any of the other ancillary roads. Essentially, the double driveway, and really, quite honestly, in 14 and 15, it would be more of the lots are so large, it wouldn't be a hammerhead type driveway. It would be almost a U-shaped driveway with an entrance and an exit. So I'm willing to do that. So in terms of what we need to make happen on Soleil Hills Drive and Soleil Vista Drive, because they change, that road actually changed when it goes through Pod 15, so that we don't have two identical addresses. That's why we had to make sure that the roads had two different names. I'm willing to work through all of those issues with regard to the driveways. I'm willing to concede on the setback on the driveways, and I'm willing to give you the porch that you're looking for. Because I understand that you want a little bit more texture and something that's not so garage door driven. I completely get that. And to be honest with you, the gentleman that I work for is obviously a very skilled and established developer that does not build some of the things that you've seen in, quite honestly, in that area, specifically down around Pod 35 and 39. We built Pod 3A, which is Soleil Lofts, which is that microgrid solar apartment complex that's one of the nicest apartment complexes in the state of Utah, if not in the country. We don't build things that are Army barrack looking.
And we're not saying that you
we wouldn't be
do.
allowed to if we wanted to.
We just want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves
I
with
get
the
it.
MDA and making it very clear on both sides.
I understand. I do understand.
And already in these design standards, they're staggering both horizontal and vertical. So when you're driving down a streetscape, you're not going to see uniformity in the fronts of these buildings. So A, they're not going to be the same floor plan or the same elevation repeated over and over. And then B, they'll be staggered in terms of setback. And then vertically, we purposefully design, per the owner's request, that there's vertical variety as well. We don't try to take a straight grade just from point A to point B.
I appreciate that. You should have started with that.
There were so many questions about it.
Yeah, Well, I mean, I would have loved to have gone through this with all of you if those questions had been asked of us. So I hope I'm not angering any of the commissioners or any of the staff by coming up here and trying to explain this a little bit in further detail.
And we're on the same page with Clint and all the ideas that have been discussed. Sometimes you'll see something in here. It's my fault that the 18-foot driveway's in there, because what I'm thinking is everybody wants a 22. The owners, our client wants a 22. But sometimes it's nice to be able to have one driveway on the end of a curve, be allowed to have part of that driveway be 18, or you lose the whole unit. So that's by far the exception if we wanted a shorter one, but Craig's saying they'll all be 22. But that's the only.
And if we have to lose lots and lose units to be able to achieve that, I'm willing to do that.
So, Forrest, I mean, he's talking about vertical staggering, horizontal staggering, a deeper driveway, the front porch.
You want a sense of place and a sense of community. We don't want something that looks like it's, you know, just the same exact thing all the way down the road. Nobody likes that.
And then on top of that, Daryl, the landscaping also will have variety and break it up again. So you don't see a linear streetscape.
You folks are building the street landscaping. Are you doing the front yard landscaping? Some developers do that.
We will do the front yard landscaping, yes.
That does give you the ability to play.
We are. I've said it numerous times, and I've said it to staff, and I've said it to city council. We want to be good partners. We don't want to come in here and have you approve something that no one wants to buy and that you don't want to drive by and you don't want to look at. We want to be proud of what we build in the community.
Well, it's starting to not look like tenant housing to me, so how's my architect friends think about this?
This has a fully landscaped, improved park running down, right down the middle of it. And you'll see those pod plans come into you. Right now, we're just talking about the MDA, which is pretty high level. But you'll see this project come in. It used to have, I don't have my number in front of me, but it used to have about 80 units more. It used to be a high-density pod. And the owner wanted to make it a lower-density, single-family unit pod. But we didn't have design guidelines for that particular kind of use. So we created them here. But really what they're entitled to do now is a high-density pod, but they don't even want to do that. And so what we have now is a single-family unit project, and it has a linear park that varies in width right down the middle. It has some retaining on the high side, and then on the lower side, all the backyards open to the park. It's kind of a pet-friendly theme, and it allows everybody to circulate from one end to the other and have connectivity with all the trails. So it's quite nice, and it's these days it's hard to get into a house, and part of the goal of this project was to help people get into a nice but smaller single-family unit. It should serve a really great purpose for a lot of young families who want to get in.
Yes, that's exactly what pod 17 and 16 are meant to do.
And really, it's pod 16 and 17. We say it applies to all of the other medium-density areas, but so far, that's not the plan anyway. So even where this is applied, it could even be more specific, like you've mentioned.
Any additional questions from, and any additional thoughts? And thank you for coming back.
This time,
up.
no.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
How about adding in some of the elements that Reed brought up about staggering?
Staggering
that in
front
as
porch
well?
and a 22-foot deep
Horizontal,
driveway.
vertical staggering.
Yeah,
Yeah, the horizontal, the vertical, the
staggering,
22-foot
a
driveways.
porch, 20 foot.
And the variable front yard landscaping.
Mm-hmm.
If we added those under element or recommendation, was it 4?
Yeah, where it's planning
Oh, and the
commission.
porch, yeah.
I think that's what I would want out of it. That'd make me feel comfortable about what they would.
If I could make
have.
a recommendation.
Sure.
Well, I can't, I'm the chair.
Well, you can't make a motion. but you
Formal
can-
motion, but you can
talk
make a-
about your recommendations.
Yeah.
Let
No,
me-
if I could, I would.
Let me just repeat a couple
Go
of
ahead,
the
Clint.
standards that you're hitting on here, just so I make sure that we have everything that you are looking for. So we have setbacks we've addressed, porches, garage orientation, maybe addressing pedestrian-oriented front facades, changing the driveway length, double drives only occurring in certain pods, horizontal and vertical staggering, and landscape variation.
On the porch, I would say 40-foot or 40 square foot covered porch.
Oh, yeah, I do have that, 40 square foot porches,
Okay.
minimum, right?
Yeah, and I believe he mentioned pod, I can't read this, 8A, 19.
Oh, along Soleil Hills.
How do you pronounce that anyway?
Soleil Hills.
Okay, with an S on it. Soleil Hills, along Soleil Hills, pod 8A, pod 19. Maybe a little tail of pod 8B.
Well, once we add that to the list, then it would be, it would just apply throughout the MDA.
Yeah.
So if we just add under recommendation 4, if we added those elements that Clint's written down, then,
Well, it wants us to specify too, says specific pods.
oh, does
Do
it?
we want to say, do we want to
Oh,
change that?
can you bring that
too?
back up, Mitch?
Well, we could say medium and high density,
The recommendations.
or just
page?
medium. I guess it would just be
And
medium.
also, are we going to have to say it verbatim for how it's worded in the MDA under the definitions?
I think maybe the easy way to say it is for medium density small lot, that applies to high density and to medium density lots. So wherever it's orange or wherever it's salmon, that would be where it applies,
Does that?
if they go with the small lot.
Does that give, excuse me, does that give the developer the ability to change medium density to high density?
That would require a land use, along with those medium density and low. They'll have a zone applied to them as well. They can change.
Or the overall number of units, they would have to come back to the council, right?
They can do, clustering.
I don't know, I think for tonight, that's a win-win.
I think so too.
Recommendation or what? Driveway lengths, double drive.
Anyone who'd like to make that motion?
What about Clint's recommendation for a variation so that every 3 houses, it has to be a different?
That's already an ordinance.
Okay, good,
So unless it's specified within the MDA, then
okay.
if you don't say it.
See some furious writing going on here.
He's feverishly writing something.
Taking
I'm
a lot
just
of
trying
brain
to make the
power.
list.
22 inch. The porch, certain square footage of porch.
You gonna do it for us, or am I gonna take a stab at it?
You can take a stab at it if you want.
writing it down.
Just for my personal, make
With
sure.
with a little help from my friends, we can put this together. I recommend item 5.2 go forward to City Council with the addition of staff recommendation number 4 to include horizontal staggering of the structure, vertical staggering of the structure, 22-foot driveways, variable front yard landscape, 40 square foot front porches, what's that? Covered front porches, double driveways throughout pod 8A, and I believe it was 19 along Soleil Boulevard,
And 16 and 17.
Yeah.
and 16 and 17, and pods 16 and 17.
And the porch protrude in front of the garage door.
Maybe even if they
garage
stagger
doors.
the
Yeah,
buildings.
that's true if they stagger it, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're good.
Got all that?
I'm sorry, does that mean that we're requiring them to have the double driveway? Or just,
No.
or that we're limiting it to
Allowing
those
them to have
pods?
it
Allowing
in that
Allowing,
area.
okay.
I mean, engineering may come up and say, you know, it doesn't make sense here, but,
Just to clarify.
which when it gets
that's
to that
the-
part, I understand. It's all this other stuff that I get lost in.
So
So-
that,
We had a question on the motion here.
sorry, I just want to clarify. So is this, for those recommendations, is that covering the entirety of the medium density small lot?
Yes, that's what item number 4 is talking about, is proposed medium-density small lot standards.
I'll second that.
Have a motion by Darrell, second by Brady. So we'll call a vote. Let's start with Andrea.
Yes.
Darrell?
Yes.
Tara?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Forrest?
Yes.
Brody?
Yes.
The motion is approved for recommendation to City Council. With that, that is the last item on our agenda for the evening. Let's see, is there any, let's see, what is it? Oh, here we go. Any final chair or commission comments? I'll take that as a no. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.